all this room. Yeah, so full disclosure, I'm not a professional speaker or anything like that. I have given this talk twice-ish, yeah, 2 times, and both times I've sort of had conflicted feelings. Like on one hand, it's sort of nerve-wracking being up here on the stage and all that. Like I'm an introvert, so public speaking in general is sort of terrifying. But on the other hand, I'm excited, like, because this is a microphone, you're an audience, I'm Filipino, and this is basically karaoke. So anyway, I'm Richard. I'm the UX lead at Previous Next, and Microcopy is a topic something I really like to nerd out on. So I'll sign up for random products and services on a Friday night by myself. That's what I do. And just see what kind of words they use in their interfaces. So that's sort of how the blog started as well. And if you're not sure what Microcopy is, that's completely fine. Door's over there. No, just joking. We'll cover all of that shortly anyway, along with a bunch of other things. So let's get started. So here's the classic overview slide. We're going to be going over what Microcopy is, what it can be used for as well, and the importance of choosing the right words. So there's going to be a bunch of examples throughout the presentation as well, so let's jump into it. First up, what's Microcopy? So in design circles, it's really popular at the moment. It's all over the design blogs, Medium and InVision especially, blog things every other day. But while it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, Microcopy itself has been around for a while, and you're probably more familiar than you realize. Because it's there when you download something. Hold on, there you go. And when you shut down your computer. Even when you log into Facebook. Error messages, button labels, form field placeholders, pop-ups, and notifications. All over notifications actually. You swipe them away, they just keep coming right back. So the words and messages that help you around products and websites, that's Microcopy. It's not always about being small and subtle though. So we'll look at an example now as promised. So when you send an email, you just need to know that it was sent. This example from Spark is a pretty common approach for email clients because it's simple and it's subtle. Like you send the email, the message appears and disappears just like that. Because at the end of the day, it's just an email and it happens all the time. You probably send several every hour, so you don't really need to celebrate something like that. But sending out a campaign out on MailChimp, on the other hand, like that's a bigger deal. There's more weight and intention behind the decision like that, so it deserves a pat on the back. Or in their case, a high five. But you have to pick what's appropriate. Often you are just giving information and then getting out of the way, but it's not always about speed. Sometimes you need someone to slow down and pay attention, and Microcopy is really effective at adding just the right amount of friction. So this is a product called Abstract, a service which allows design teams using Sketch to work off the same design files, basically. So projects live online, not your computer. So if your computer blows up, you don't lose everything, which is fantastic. There are some actions like deleting a project where they need to make sure they have their users' full attention. So let's see what that looks like. So when you're deleting a project, it's not really like deleting an email. So you really need to understand the weight of the decision and the consequences. So let's look a little bit closer. The description that's there is very clear and concise. So they've also front-loaded the critical information like permanently delete to make sure the users read that first. And the form and button labels there. So both are really spelled out. So it's hard to misinterpret anything that's going on there. So this makes the decision-making process very intentional, so you know what you're in for, basically. Moving along. Earlier I mentioned Microcopy helps you navigate around products and websites. So let's unpack that just a little bit. When I talk about what Microcopy brings to user experience, I often reference these two concepts. providing context and setting expectations. Providing context is about providing just enough information about what's relevant right now. Setting expectations is about letting users know what will happen next. Critical tasks like that deleting project example often come with a heck of a lot of increased anxiety around something like that. And like we saw, the right sentence can make like all the difference. And I sort of look at it like this. The more someone knows about what's happening now and what will happen next, the more confident they are about the decisions they're making. And users just need like a little bit of momentum as well. They don't need to know everything up front. So take Siri for example. Generally with new technology, you need to establish the ground rules. So in Siri's case, you need to know what you can ask and what you can expect in return. So they do something like this. And that's a good start because it gives you a better understanding of what the possibilities are. Quickly you understand you can do things like call people, launch apps, and just be a little bit casual with your language. All they're doing at the end of the day is giving users a running start, like just providing some examples and letting them figure out the rest. But an important thing to point out is this. What you choose to say plays a big role because it influences the decisions that follow. When you're writing microcopy, a lot of it comes down to choosing the right words. That means you're often choosing what to say and how to say it, but most importantly, how you're framing it. And how things are framed can make a massive difference. So take pricing for example. I see this tactic a lot and it's honestly getting pretty annoying. Monthly prices for a product that's charged once a year. Because at a glance, both of these looked like the charged monthly, but really only Spotify is. Like if you look closely at Figma, that price there isn't actually their monthly price, it's their annual price just divided by 12. Their monthly price is at the bottom, just tucked at the bottom there. And that's not a dig at Figma either because honestly they're not alone. Everyone seems to be doing it. It's kind of this tech standard just to be competitive with one another. And like personally, I'd like to see more examples like this. Like clear monthly pricing, clear annual pricing, including what the difference is and what they save. Most importantly, I know what my choices are. And users really should know what their choices are because when they don't, then we're probably looking at something called a dark pattern. So a dark pattern is basically when a user is tricked into doing something. One of the most common examples is called the bait and switch. It's when the user expects one thing but gets something else. So in this example, we have two checkboxes. Typically, with a checkbox, like it means you're opting into something, like when you check that box. And this example has been carefully worded to make you think you are, but it's actually the opposite. And then the second checkbox, that's actually an opt-in, making the UI more confusing because they switch the behavior, so that's another dark pattern in itself. Stuff like that is pretty dodgy behavior, and what's the worst part about it is like there's bigger companies that are guilty of this behavior as well. So this is something, a product you're familiar with at least. Jeez, check out that green. Recently, I unsubscribed from a paid Evernote account. So this is what that process was like. So I started my journey from the accounts page, makes sense. Halfway down the page, I saw a link to manage my subscription. It's a bit hidden, but it's not that bad really. This is where it gets tricky. So granted the information at the top is pretty helpful, but there's no button to cancel or anything, so not even a sneaky hyperlink or something like that. Looking down the page, I found a summary of the pricing tiers and a bunch of buttons. Given I'm trying to cancel my subscription, nothing felt that obvious really. The most relevant was update subscription, because I suppose cancelling is sort of updating in a way, kind of. So let's go with that guy. Yeah, payment forms are what I needed. I didn't want to change my payment details or the billing cycle. This I actually thought was a link to cancel, but it's actually just text telling me that I can cancel any time, which is a bit ironic. So I did that process twice, and then I resorted to this. And you really shouldn't have to Google your way out of something like that. So what was the answer? It was on this page, right at the bottom. There's a little button to change my account. So to reiterate what's going on there, to cancel my subscription, I had to change my account to the free one. So something like that's very misleading, because while they might have the same effect, it's not really the same action. So, thank you, Google. Downgrading to basic. So at least it looks like we're in the right place. At the top, there's a clear header with a warning message and a big green button. What do you think that big green button says, though? Proceed to downgrade, cancel subscription, something like that? Not today. So it's hard to read, but it says I changed my mind, stay with plus. So, yeah, that's the bait and switch technique we were talking about earlier. So that cancels the process. Let's keep going. This section is actually not that bad. It's pretty helpful because it gives you a quick overview what's going to change after the downgrade. So, thumbs up. These buttons, though, were again pretty annoying because the primary button cancels the process again, and the secondary button, downgrade to basic, it's a bit passive aggressive, but at least that has to be it. So let's go with that. And luckily, it was it. This page is almost perfect. Like, the title is clear, the supporting copy lets me know when they'll stop charging me. And most importantly, the buttons, like the labels are clear and the hierarchy is clear enough. Like, I'd switch them around, but at least one's big and green. And then on the right, there's this last-ditch effort at customer attention, and I'm fine with those as long as they don't get in the way, and it didn't get in the way that much. It's off to the right. And that was that. So it really shouldn't be that hard to get out of anything. At the end of the day, Microcopy is just a tool to enhance the user experience. So if a flow is designed specifically to confuse users, Microcopy will just make that experience more confusing. So, big one. As design teams creating these flows, we have this opportunity to influence user decisions. And while there may be important business goals like customer attention, we need to still make sure we're acting responsibly on behalf of our users, because stuff like that just isn't okay. If someone wants to unsubscribe or anything for that matter, just let them and do it on good terms. What we should be aiming for is Microcopy that helps users when it matters. Everyone's probably aware of Slack in this room. So one thing I admire about how they use Microcopy is just their ability to provide the right information at the right time. Just small things like showing text formatting shortcuts while you're typing, handy. Letting you know messages can't be sent while you're offline, awesome. And showing an old channel name if it's since been renamed. Like that's one I stumbled on which I really liked. So quiet achievers like this are really effective because they're timely and relevant. And that's what Microcopy is really great at. So coming up to a little bit of a close now, we've covered a bunch of things. How Microcopy is everywhere, how establishing context and setting expectations leads to confident actions, and how we need to choose our words carefully. Most importantly, we've also touched on how Microcopy can influence decisions, good and bad. So if you take one thing away from this talk, make it this. Be responsible. Because at the end of the day, users expect you're acting in their best interest, so don't betray that trust by tricking them into making choices they're not even aware of. And that's about it, everyone. If you have any questions or feedback, I'm pretty sure we've got time for some quick Q&A. Otherwise, I'll be around or connect with me on one of those things. And yeah, thanks for being an awesome audience. questions?
Hi, hello.
Yeah, ask away.
I have a slightly different question towards that.
Yes.
So I come from an organization that really has a big trouble or hassle in reading the policies that are there.
Mm.
Can we use microcopy to kind of simplify how people, because most of the words are a bit complex and people don't want to really go through that.
It depends on what the purpose of it is. Like, if there's legal reasons behind something that like it has to be phrased in a certain way, like depending on how you approach the microcopy, even if you have the right intentions, you know, driving the decision, that it's probably a complicated thing to kind of say best practice is just do something. So I think it's always beneficial to give like a preview of something, to give someone an idea of what the subject matter could be, but maybe as a step before providing the stuff that really is spelled out because it just needs to be. Does that kind of answer that?
Yeah,
A bit? If there's something like really specific, you can like ask me afterwards because it probably might need a little bit of discussion. Yeah, so generally microcopy should just make something easier to understand. So sometimes sometimes you can get around it, but I just wouldn't want to like take away the essence of what you're actually hiding. Like, I don't know what the words are that we're kind of talking about here, so I'm kind of speaking the abstract, but it's yeah. I think there's a way to do it, but yeah, let's have a chat afterwards maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
That was a great presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I heard in passing that the sort of chappy copy style,
Mm.
like MailChimp, and that is kind of used to use with voice and tone is going sort of out of fashion. Is that the case? And like, why is that?
I don't think it's going out of fashion. And I suppose with something like this, I don't really consider it like if it's on trend or something like that. Like, at the end of the day, it comes down to like what is the clearest way to communicate something in like the most concise way. And it's like the thing that a lot of people will misinterpret is just let's strip words for the sake of doing it. Like, let's get it as, you know, but I think it's just say what you need to say to get the message across without kind of like saying, you know, over emphasizing certain things that don't need to. So in terms of just like a starting point, I like to always like write microcopy as I'd speak because it's the most natural way for someone to actually absorb it. But again, like, yeah, I cannot fault MailChimp in anything. Like, they're kind of like the gold standard for me for like a lot of things with just voice and tone, microcopy, content strategy, just, yeah. So I'd want to know where that's coming from because kind of like, yeah, I'm biased because like I have a lot of respect for that company, but yeah.
I'll try and find out.
Yeah, please do, because then I can like hassle them on Twitter or something like that, anonymously. Any other questions?
Do you think the way that microcopy is going is into more like an AI kind of thing, where the responses
It's got a lot of like transfer, yeah. It's got a lot of transfer with like I've seen a lot of talks this year and last year on like chatbots and things like that, and there's a lot of learnings and just knowledge transfer between like just the way you speak to make something like easy to understand, just understanding what people say. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of segues into that kind of, in those kind of technology things, yeah, with the written word.
And would you be wary of going too far into that? And
Oh, in which way?
like, I mean, in your forms and that sort of stuff, or your workflows, would you be wary of going too far into AI where it's like specific to every person that uses the site?
Are you talking about like changing the words?
Yeah.
I'm not actually sure, to be honest. Yeah, I haven't really thought about that too much. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like a hassle to burden, but yeah. Yeah, sorry, I can't answer that one in more detail. Yeah. Any other questions? Sweet, whoa, two more. Okay, cool.
Could you backtrack to fairly early in the talk, the delete slide?
Yes.
Type in something.
Yes, sir. Probably abstract. This go? The delete one?
Can't see it here, sorry.
Yep, sorry. Here we go. That one?
Yeah, okay, it's just sort of context, I've often seen you have to type in the name, and we're missing that from here.
Yeah. So sorry, which one?
So it says good microcopy at the top, and I wasn't quite sure whether that was there, so that's something. But you could still accidentally delete the wrong thing. It's not inviting you to remind yourself of the exact name
So
of the thing you're deleting.
the good microcopy things are the name, like my fake name of a project. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what was the?
Just I've seen sometimes you have to type the name into the box.
Yeah, I think GitHub does a very similar thing where it's like you've like whatever it is, like this one says you've got to actually type confirm delete. Something like that is like, yeah, there's no conversational aspect to please type confirm delete. That's what I like about how direct that is, and that's kind of like where you need to weigh up like when do you play the direct card versus like we need to speak more human. There's something like that is like, yeah, I think that does the right things for me. Yeah.
Thanks.
Nick, Fletch.
What do you think about like a split user interface in terms of trying to create microcopies for complex legal wording, where you've got, say, a complex long contract with split view, sort of the legalese is on the right,
Mm.
there's sort of a human natural language version on the left, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a solution to?
I think there's something to be had there, because I think it's like similar to your question, where it's like the example that comes to mind is have you been to the Smart Traveller website? So yeah, so are we going? All right, so on the Smart Traveller website, like there's like a big thing about like when the country you want to visit, and they've got these like snapshots at the top, which kind of like summarize what's going on in that document. And a similar technique is what comes to mind with something like that, where it's like you can invest the time to read the whole thing, but it's like, you know, there's like,
Sometimes you just want the boiled down version.
yeah, just to know you're in the right place, yeah. And then you, yeah,
Legally got to have the legal version.
basically, because you can't hide anything. Yeah, but I think we are officially at time. Done. Thank you.